Abstract, but I mean, I guess at some point something needs to be done. Something needs to suggest
Hello. All right. How are you?
The moment's arrived. It can be put off no longer.
No, we're going to
have to write a piece.
We're going to have to write a piece. Exactly.
I suppose what we should talk about is the kind of process that we might try and follow in terms of how we bring the dance element and the music together.
This idea of playing with numbers, we have 3 elements, but we have 7 antiphons, we have 3 dances, we have, so how do those things connect? Are we maybe doing 7 little scenes?
Yeah, I see.
Maybe based on a theme.
Mm-hmm. And I suppose one thing we've got that's sort of hanging over all of us are these texts and how we use the texts, whether I'm going to set all of them or whether that's going to be too restrictive, and maybe if we free ourselves, there's an organ element as well which we could use, and maybe some sections could be without the text. One thing would be if we went for certain movements that don't have singing in at all.
What's interesting about that is also that it makes you listen to the silence differently.
Yeah.
Because there's the expectation of music, especially if there is music elsewhere in the piece accompanying dance, that then if there's movement without music, your ears are still kind of facing outwards in anticipation of there being more sound. And actually I think that then you hear the building, you hear the feet on the ground, you hear the sound of the bodies against each other, which is, a very subtle and beautiful sound that one doesn't normally experience.
He said a fulfillment of things bringing order to the world.
Yes.
That's what this whole... So I was quite interested in how do we show maybe these 2 different order and chaos? Choreographically, that could be quite an interesting thing to show. And I always find Anthony Gormley quite interesting, and I just saw this something. There was something just quite incredible. It's sort of, the chaos of all of that. This thing about waiting and anticipation.
Yes.
Yes, that's really the text, I think, was waiting and calling and expecting and...
Yes, the promise of something.
Yeah.
I've often thought about how one ends this, and I do think it would be... I've been thinking very much about the word veni, which obviously appears in this as a kind of token, as a kind of symbol. I was thinking about the idea of somehow framing it with a sort of literal cry of, whether it's a musical cry or a choreographed cry, or how we do it, I don't know, of this sort of veni, come, a sort of plea at the beginning and a plea at the end.
There's something kind of nicely symmetrical about that, which sort of answers the kind of symmetry of the O and all those things. There's something quite pleasingly formal about that, just as a shape, isn't it?
The entire pieces, or the entire text really, are in the future tense. They're pointing towards something that hasn't happened yet. And I think that's quite interesting. I was wondering whether that was something to think about at our sort of conceptual level, about the idea that although these are very old texts and they're in an antiquated language, they are nevertheless pointing ahead. How we do that in music and dance, I don't know. I was thinking, have I ever said a text that's really always effectively the future tense in inverted commas?
Yes, that's really interesting, isn't it?
You're normally writing, most poems one sets are either describing things that are by logic are in the present tense or the past.
Because I think that you can suggest that quite with visually, you can suggest that through dance, sort of waiting for something or anticipating something.
The O sound is interesting, I think, as a sound in its own right. It's quite a dark tone. It's got all this kind of darkness around it and kind of shadow and lots of things as a vowel, which are quite kind of the opposite of the kind of brightness of what you're kind of looking forward towards. And to me, somehow weirdly, the vowel therefore is about this sort of possibly transiting out of darkness into light.
Pythagoreans believe that nothing exists without a centre around which it revolves. So that's quite that's having something revolve around something. It's quite Whether it's sort of Clare is the centre of this, and we could have the dancers sort of revolving around her, you know, whether it's the voice, they could be something quite interesting.
And of course music itself in its construction, although it can't literally circle round because it can't go back in time, but it does so many musical devices, the rondo, the things always returning in music, right from the earliest music where repeated patterns, ostinati, again. Text is sort of held together by a kind of tension between the O, which is an address, blah, 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 and then a request, come and do something. So you've kind of got in each text there's a sort of the circling side and then the plea to be broken open, as it were.
I think that's quite easy to show or convey as well, a broken, choreographically or with bodies and something that's
kind of broken lines
lines and distangling and trying to fix or trying to reconstruct or trying to piece together. It doesn't quite get there. It's struggling to get onto its feet.
Underlying theme, isn't there, between, on one hand, all of those things we've just been talking about O and circling and returning and ritual. And yet, of course, what are all these texts doing? They're calling Veni to come, which would be a break, would be a fulfillment, would be the end of circling, would be the breaking out into something new.
Yes.
So there's a kind of circle theme, but there's also a breaking out theme of radical change. I have an idea of some musical shout of Veni or something, like a kind of headline.